Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to another episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. This is episode number 4. Today, I'm thrilled to dive into the world of innovation, resilience, and growth with a guest who has been a pioneer in the field of business communications. Joining me is Philip Portman, the CEO and visionary force behind Textdrip, a groundbreaking platform that's transforming how businesses connect with their audiences through strategic text messaging. Philip's journey as an entrepreneur is nothing short of inspiring. From navigating the highs and lows of startup life to building a successful company that empowers businesses to engage with customers meaningfully, he has proven to be a resilient and creative leader in the industry. Philip is also the host of a podcast. He's the host of the Success Is podcast. So today, we're going to put him on the other side of the microphone. In today's conversation, we'll explore Philip's insights on what it takes to build a sustainable business, how he's innovating SMS marketing, and his advice for aspiring entrepreneurs looking to make their mark. So whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, there's something here for everyone to learn. So grab a seat, settle in, and get ready to be inspired by the story and insights of Philip Portman. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I think as an entrepreneur, you're probably aware of this, but when you start talking about your entrepreneurial journey to your friends, their attention span is much shorter. They've heard all the stories. It's like, yeah. But when entrepreneurs get together, it's like going to the VFW. Sitting down with a bunch of veterans, hearing all the foxhole stories, right? We just love to tell our stories and hear stories from fellow entrepreneurs because many of us think our stories are so unique. No one else has faced the same challenges. And then you find out that, nope, we've all played the same video game of entrepreneurship. And we all have similar but different challenges and things we had to overcome. At least that's been my experience. I don't know about yours.
Absolutely. And one of the things I always thought early on was that I was never doing things the right way. I said, surely there's a way real entrepreneurs are doing this. I can't be doing things the right way. And then I started collaborating with people and go, wait a minute. Oh, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it can validate some of that stuff for me. But
to me, it's like watching a golf tournament. I'm not a big golfer. I'm a hack. And I do enjoy watching like the Masters or something when they take like 6 putts to get it in the hole. I feel really good about that because I'm like, you too, it can happen to anybody. Yeah, you're right. I think the first several years into my journey, I felt, a great deal of imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't belong here, and I'm not sure why I'm still here or how I've still survived. But I think everyone tells a very similar story, has a very similar experience. So let's talk about yours. First of all, was it always your goal to be an entrepreneur? Were you born with, this entrepreneurial drive, or did you stumble into it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And early on in life, when I was younger, I had actually told my family that when I grew up, I was going to be a millionaire and marry Cindy Crawford. How I was going to do that at the time, I really didn't have that figured out.
Don't bother me with the details, right? Yeah, you'll just do it, right?
It's going to happen that way, right?
Yeah. And how is Miss Crawford? How is Miss Crawford, by the way?
Yeah, that's right. Still working on it. No, my wife is absolutely beautiful, though. I feel like it worked out very well. My wife is gorgeous. She could be a supermodel.
So Cindy dodged the bullet.
That's right. That's right. But the seeds for that entrepreneurship were planted early with my mother. Single mother raising 7 children. She did whatever she had to get by. And we would be cleaning houses with her during the day, and newspaper route and at night, sleeping in the back of the station wagon and things like that. And so when I got into the corporate world and I started working at it, and I found success, I was very quickly promoted within the company I was working for. But I found that this was not what I wanted to do. This was not my thing. This was not my creation. And there was always this struggle with me where I wanted to do things a certain way, but I couldn't. It wasn't my world. So on the outside of my corporate world, I started flipping houses, got into some real estate with some friends. And along the way, it evolved into a restaurant delivery service, completely accidental.
So
I,
DoorDash before DoorDash.
that was, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what had happened was I was going out to eat, talking with this restaurant owner of this Chinese buffet. And he was explaining to me some of the struggles he was having with business. And there was a little bit of a language barrier, but I started telling him about the food delivery business and what he could do with it and all that stuff. And he said, "Sounds great. I'll hire you." I said, "Well, wait a minute. I don't have that business. I'm just explaining to you
It
how
would
it
be
would
good.
operate and how it would
Yeah,
work."
sure.
And so I started thinking, well, what if I did that? What if I just got into the food delivery business? And so I started exploring it and looking into it. And very shortly, I created it. And I had actually my workers that were working on the house, they would take a break from work and go run a food order, something like that. And it took off. It was extremely successful. We ended up franchising it across 6 states
Wow.
before I ultimately sold it to delivery.com and then moved into the tech world that I'm into now. So yeah, kind of accidental. And I knew I wanted to get into something, but what happened just completely fell into my lap. I thought it was just this little side project, but it ended up taking off.
Yeah, I similar story. I had a product that I really wanted the world to see. I designed this product for the industry I was working in, and I just thought that the product was so good that my employer would buy it from me and do it. And I sold and sold and sold, and they resisted and resisted, and finally I just thought, well, the only way to see this product, to get this product out there and see the light of day is to do it myself. Hence the term reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't have any entrepreneurial desire, which kind of showed when I started the business because I knew a lot technically about my product and my industry. I knew nothing about business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs start off as, their journey is the result of a ricochet of some sort, right? Very few entrepreneurs, I believe, at least in my circle of business friends, started off with the goal of, I want to work for myself. I mean, we all think that. I mean, I've thought that for years. I'd love to be my own boss because when you're your own boss, you can write yourself a check. You can take as many vacations as you want. That's the,
Yeah,
that's
sure.
that's the, that's like the Navy recruiter. See the world, join the Navy. It's great, and then you find out it's quite different than they promised. So there's expectation and then there's reality. Walk me through your entrepreneurial journey up until the current gig, Textdrip.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you've done several things and built and sold and things like that. So walk me through what the journey was like on your end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it started the flipping the houses, the food delivery company started that, and it grew it across 6 states before selling it to delivery.com. And when I had sold the company, I remember this thought, kind of that imposter syndrome. Was this it? Was this the one good idea that I had? And after I sell this, like, I'm done. That was the multi-million-dollar idea I had, and I'll never be able to do this again. And I remember kind of having that fear in the back of my head, right? Um, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. And so I ended up selling the company, and I knew I wanted to get in the tech space. So I spent time learning to code, learning to program. And I started this company called Argos Automation, where we automated CRMs and connected them with communication devices. And the first year, I built this platform myself. I marketed it. I sold it. I did everything around this.
Chief cook and bottle washer.
Yeah, the whole thing. But it was so cool to me. And I made like 60 grand that first year. And it was the coolest $60,000 I'd ever made because I did it all myself.
Right.
Right. It was like I built these bird houses and then sold them,
Right.
like it's just something different when you make it yourself.
Sure.
Later on, when my programmers actually looked at my code that I had written, they said, "Phil, you're not a programmer. Stay away from this. We'll take it from here," basically. But that was kind of a big step forward in the tech world, because I think, like you said, I think it's important that you really understand and get hands-on, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
To every aspect of your business, you can manage it better when it scales. So along that way, we determined and we found that there was a heavy demand for a good texting platform. Around that time, companies were very email centric, and they were throwing on this plugin or this SMS thing as kind of an afterthought.
Right.
And it looked like it. It looked like an afterthought. And so we built Textdrip with the texting being the center of the platform and everything it does. So it's a beautiful platform, works the best, and has the absolute best deliverability. And that's really what we built Textdrip around. And then later on, I ended up buying a 54-acre commercial horse farm because, I don't know, I just wanted to add a new level of stress to my life.
We jumped from one fire to another. So let's talk about scaling for a minute. I had a similar journey in that I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I designed all the equipment that we sold. I learned very basic coding way back when I was in high school, on a teletype machine. We didn't have CRTs then, but I knew the basics of coding. And fortunately, the controller that we were using at the time, this is back in the very early 90s, could be programmed with BASIC code. And, BASIC is, I knew BASIC. I don't know any other programming language, but I knew BASIC. And I was able to program it myself. And I was very proud of myself. It was hundreds of pages of code, which if a real programmer wrote it, it would probably be 3 paragraphs of code, but I filled up the entire memory on this little chip, but it worked. And no customer knew it was terrible code. They just knew it worked, right? Very inefficient. But I did it. And I put the machines together. I wasn't a very good assembler, but I put the machines together. I'm a much better designer than I am a manufacturer, but it worked. And then we sold another machine, and then we sold another machine and another machine. And it got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. And, I learned the difference the hard way between growth and scaling. Scaling means everything comes up at the same time. Growth is just sell more machines, right? In my case, or more services and whatever. And I realized that rapid growth is a luxury most businesses can't afford. It will kill a business. And that's one of the reasons. There are many reasons why 70% of all businesses fail, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I think the lack of proper scaling is certainly one of them. And the more sales we received, the less money we had, because in order to scale, you have to invest into the future. If you take the profit from one machine and then you want to build 3 more, you didn't make enough profit to build 3 more. You made enough profit to build 1 more, and scaling is an investment. And how did you, in Textdrip or any other enterprise that you had, how did you navigate proper scaling? How were you able to take the profit from this much business and, build a enterprise to do more business? What was that journey like?
Yeah, great question. So, my companies have always been bootstrapped. I have never been somebody to take on loans, take on debt. I'm not discouraging that from anyone. There's probably various people that are very successful with that and have a good understanding of it. I don't do it in personal life, and I don't do it in business. And that's just part of my values. So I've always been bootstrapped, so the company and the profits get reinvested into the growth of the company. The first thing I would say with that is, with me, I need to have a firm understanding of every aspect of the business before I can pass it on to somebody else. I'm very hands-on, especially in the beginning. So starting a company like that, I'm involved in the sales, the marketing, the design of the program, everything, and every aspect of it. And then as I scale with people that I can trust. Trust for me is more important than knowledge or skills or anything that can be taught. Trust to me is number one. I am relatively slow to hire, but I'm very quick to fire. And the one thing that will get you fired from me or anything else is lying or mistrust. I can't handle it. I have to have people that I can trust. And there's been individuals that I've carried with me from company to company. When I sold the food delivery company, I said, hey, you guys all have the opportunity to maintain your jobs with this company and continue on with them. Or you can come with me. I have no idea what I'm going to do. You're welcome to come along on it, but I just got to let you know, I have no idea what we're getting into.
Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
That's right. And there's 3 employees that chose to come with me on the new venture with me, and they're still with me to this day. And that took a level of trust and commitment from them. And so it pushed me to make sure I delivered on the other end. And I was able to help them achieve their personal goals in life. The things that they had put as a list, things that they wanted to achieve in life, they've been able to check those things off, and I was part of that. So I feel grateful to be able to do that. But the trust is two-way. And because I'm running a business that's across multiple continents, I don't have the ability to sit there and micromanage every task of it.
Right.
Early on, when we were developing a new platform, version 2.0 of Textdrip, my CTO over in India was working on building it for about 6 months. And 6 months of me just sending money out there and saying, I hope and pray this thing is exactly, what we want it to do.
That's where your trust thing really pays off, right?
Absolutely. You got a guy on the other side of the world that I am fully trusting. And I would see screenshots, or we would get on a Zoom call together and get updates and things like that. But I am fully investing in the new version of the software, investing a lot of money into this person on the other end of the world that has the complete opportunity to take advantage of me fully.
Sure.
And I'm not going to say that hasn't happened. I've had employees take advantage of my trust, and they are no longer with me. But that's the payoff that you get from having people that you can trust that can help you scale your business.
Right.
And today I've got a phenomenal leadership team, and they're with me for the long haul because of the trust that I put in there. And they understand that trust is part of what makes our company great.
Well, I think what makes you successful in the 30 percentile that stay in business and are successful is the fact that you recognized that the company is more than just yourself, right? You can't do everything, either because of time or skill. And, when I started my company, I did everything like you did. And when I hired people, it was more like a body count. If you're willing to accept what I'm willing to pay and you have a pulse, you're hired, right? Because I needed bodies to put stuff together. So the company could never be greater than my skill set, whatever that was. If I was an 8 out of 10, the company would always be an 8 and never be a 10. And at the time, this is going to sound egotistical, but it was true. I was probably the smartest person in the room in my company, not because I'm that smart, just because of who else I brought in, right? And there's a business principle where, if you're a 10, you tend to hire something lower than 10. And then those people get up through the ranks. So say you hire a 7, and the 7 will hire people usually lower than themselves because of stuff going on in their head. And so eventually, you just kind of circle the drain. It's like skill inbreeding almost, right? And then I came to the conclusion one day with help from a mentor that, I need to bring in people way more talented than myself. So my goal quickly switched from the reality of being the smartest person in the room to I want to be the stupidest person in the room. I want to be surrounded by people way smarter than me. I have a skill, and I'm sure all entrepreneurs can say this and have it be accurate, that entrepreneurs are uniquely wired. We have the passion, we have the vision, we see things differently than other people. We see things in deep, rich 3D, and we see timelines, and that's a unique gift. And what we're not always good at as entrepreneurs is the running of the business, the logistics, the financials, all the stuff that comes with running a business. We're good at the vision. We're in the crow's nest with our little binoculars, and we can see over the horizon more than anyone can. But those aren't necessarily the skills to handle scaling, handle growth, handle all the challenges that come up. We have a very unique set of tools, but we don't have all the tools. So that was a really smart move. And I did the same thing. Probably it took a little longer to do it. I do get things eventually, but I have to hit a lot of walls before the business gods convince me that I need to change what I'm doing.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I struggled with in entrepreneurship is one of the things that made me successful in life was my work ethic. Instilled in me from a very young age from a mother who had the same work ethic. Well, what I would find was when I had downtimes, when I had times that I was not busy, I was finding things to do. And I was trying to settle this anxiety that I had that said, you need to keep working. You can't slow down. You need to keep working. The problem when you're trying to delegate things off and you're trying to scale a company with that type of anxiety-driven work ethic is you end up getting involved and causing problems in their different area, right? Yeah. So when I'm in one of my leaders' calls communicating directly with their employees, who do you think the employee's listening to? Their manager or the founder of the company?
Right.
Right? And so I had to take a look in the mirror and say, do I need to be involved with all of these things? Do I need to be doing these things? If I truly trust these people, I need to trust them. But the real problem is I need to deal with this anxiety that's causing me to have to sit there and work, and be involved with everything. No, I need to set back and trust the individuals. And that was a big moment in scaling and has really allowed me to scale my business in the way it has is really putting that trust, putting my, the money where the mouth is, right? Like putting it down and actually saying, hey, I do trust these people and I'm going to take a step back and let them do their job.
Yeah. I find that when I show up in a meeting, I change the vibe of the meeting. Just exactly to your point, it becomes about me, and I don't want it to be about me. I hired them so me didn't have to be there, right? And but even today, I'm semi-retired now. I still own my business. It still runs great. It runs way better than when I was running everything because my team is amazing. But when I do show up to the company, mostly for a social visit, little proof of life, I'm still here. I changed the vibe. And it hit me several years ago when I was working there every day. Whenever I'd go into the factory floor, the vibe would change. And one day I noticed I walked out into the floor and I heard this very distinct whistle. Like, I can't whistle very well right now, but it was a little kind of a human-made dog whistle. I didn't think much of it. And then I think the next day I walked out on the production floor and I heard a very similar whistle. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is that like officer on deck? Is that like, are they warning each other? So I would leave, go back to my office, and maybe 20 minutes later, come back out on the floor and I heard it again. And I talked to my general manager and I said, I think there's a signal whenever I walk out onto the floor, there's a whistle. He goes, Mike, they've been doing that for years. I'm like, what? I had no idea. But that brought to light the fact that if I'm hiring people and I'm paying them good money and I'm hiring great people, my job is to stay out of their way. I need to be the icebreaker. I need to be the ship in front clearing the path, clearing the ice, so they can sail through more effortlessly. That's my job. And my job is not to tell them what I want and then tell them how to do it, because I might as well just do it. My job is to tell them what I want and then give them all the tools, motivation, inspiration, whatever. And a lot of that is just not getting in their way. Just wait and see. I can't tell you how many times I've had like a young employee come up to me with an idea and I would just snap back like, oh, we tried that, doesn't work. Next. And that was true. But now, and it took a long time and it was really hard to get to the point where I go, well, that's a great idea. Let's, give it a shot, try it, small scale, try it, or sell me on it, tell me how that would work. And 9 out of 10 times they succeed at something that we had previously tried and failed. So,
and even if they don't, they're learning something along the way.
Yep.
And that in itself is valuable.
Yeah,
right?
I learned it. Yeah, I learned it and it was valuable. And I can either tell them it doesn't work, then they feel devalued, or I can let them fail. It's like when you're raising children, let them fail. Sometimes they have to fall off the bike. You don't want them to, but they need to know where their skill levels end, and they need to learn balance, and they need to have that tribal knowledge, not just, trust me, this is the way the world works, son. They need to bruise up a little bit. And, that does come with some expense, obviously. But what's more expensive, to make one mistake and learn from it, or to think you know everything, to listen to a bunch of other people and not go out on a limb, not take that risk, not find the next big invention, right? Speaking of invention, I've found when I talk to entrepreneurs that there's a host of reasons people start companies, but it falls into 3 main buckets. One is someone has an idea they see a product that's selling well, they realize there's more space in the market, they can be an also-ran, they can do it too. And there's a lot of businesses that start that way. So they jump in, they kind of pile on, not a lot of difference. Then there are those that see there's a need for something that's just not there. It's revolution. And they start something from nothing, and then they have to kind of create the need, create the market, convince people. Those are really revolutionary businesses, but they're not very common. And then there are those, and I think you're this category, that see something, it's promising, but it's not great. To your point, it was an email platform morphed into a texting platform. Great idea, but not quite there. That seems to be the model you followed. And if that's the case, you're following in the footsteps of like Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was running Apple and he was working on his Mac, he visited a technology center in the Bay Area, California Bay Area, called Xerox PARC. And he saw that they had a mouse tethered to a computer. And he goes, this is great. And they're like, yeah, the people can program their copy machines or whatever they were making and use a mouse instead of a keyboard. And he saw a much bigger use for that. And he incorporated, ran back to his Silicon Valley headquarters and said, we need to build this thing called a mouse. And they did. And it changed the world, right? And the same with the graphic user interface, the GUI interface. He saw that and went, there's Mac. There's the interface. We need a graphic user interface. He didn't invent any of those things, but he capitalized on it in a good way. He exploited it in a good way and changed the world. And every computer company followed suit very quickly. We can't imagine not having a graphic user interface. We can't imagine not having a touchpad or a mouse or something. Learning all the shortcut commands on a keyboard would be exhausting. Point and click. That came from Jobs, but it wasn't invented by Jobs. He just saw it. So he saw a better mousetrap. And I'm assuming that's the model that you followed when you started Textdrip. You said, we can do this way better. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the companies that you described that say, hey, let's jump on the bandwagon because I want to make money, right? They're starting with that let's make money first mentality. struggle to find success. At least that's not something that I could do. For me, it's usually I'm not happy with what's out there. I think that there's a better way of doing it. And I don't think you necessarily always need to be the first to invent that. Like you even look at the iPhone, there was smartphones around for a while before that. I had the Microsoft version for a while before that. And, so it's not a matter of saying, hey, I'm the first to market with this idea. It's looking at something and saying, is there a better way to do this that I would personally get really excited about around this item? And so with Textdrip, what we were finding was the email centric model, right? Is old school. It's been around forever, email. Texting has been around for a while as well, but it's never gone away and it's staying consistent, but it was never the center of the platform. But it's interesting, 33% of adults prefer texting over any other form of communication. That includes face-to-face. They prefer texting over phone calls, face-to-face, social media. Texting is their preferred way of communication.
Yep.
Texting is the most used form of communication for American adults under the age of 50.
50.
So you think about a generation that you're trying to tap into. I mean, that's just about everyone that's under retirement age. So, we said, hey, texting is this great form of communication, has a much higher response rate than email, better deliverability, a faster response rate. It's 90 seconds instead of 90 minutes. Why are we throwing this thing on there as an afterthought? What would happen if we centered everything around that? So you go onto a website, instead of being put on an email drip campaign, you're put on a text drip campaign. And we started toying around with first that idea. Like, let's make everything around this. And we started having some users test it out. Hey, just give us feedback. Free of charge, give us feedback on what you think. The feedback was, I want to start paying you for this. That was the feedback. Oh my God, this thing's amazing. I'm making sales off of it. It's incredible. I want to start paying you for this. Along that same line, the industry changed. The 10DLC industry, so 10-digit long code industry changed, and there became an entire compliance component with that.
Yep.
Email-centric companies, CRM companies didn't want to deal with the texting compliance, but we did, because it was everything we knew and breathed, and we were all in on it. So we became the experts in that. And so companies that handled email or were CRMs, they said, well, let's partner with Textdrip. Let's have them do the deal with that, because we don't want to get into that mess. And ultimately, the business grew as a result of it. Landline remover was a very similar one as well. I was trying to find a way to clean up lead list and remove landline numbers.
Right.
And
which go nowhere, and they don't know it goes nowhere, right? Just
right.
hits a pit somewhere.
And I was looking around for a service everywhere. I just wanted to partner with somebody and say, hey, let's connect this API and we'll remove landlines. And I had a phone number that was a landline of my own that I knew was a landline. I used that to test it out. And for some reason, it came up as an old cell phone number, which it was 10 years ago. I think it was a Sprint phone or something like that. Yeah. And it was coming up on all their lists. I said, all these people are using the same database.
Sure.
And so it was out of that frustration that I ended up building Landline Remover, not because I wanted to make this product, but because everything else out there was terrible, and I couldn't find anything else to serve the need that I was ultimately trying to build. And the result of it, Landline Remover ended up taking off because it saved people so much money from texting non-textable numbers. So yeah, absolutely the way that I get into a new business venture.
So let me ask you kind of a technical question or a practical question about Textdrip or any service that provides texting. You mentioned that the response rate on text is much, much higher than traditional email. And I totally agree with that. I have purposely different notification tones for my email than I do for my text. And I mean, if I'm in the shower and I hear a ding instead of which is my text notification versus I might get out of the shower and look at it, or it's the first thing I do when I get out of the shower. It's like, who just texted me? And that's primarily because overwhelmingly, most of my texts are from my friends, my social circle, business things. They're things I really want to look at right away. Most of my email, I'm copied because I own the company. I'm copied on a lot of things, and I don't even read them. I get them, and I go, okay, delete. I spend every morning deleting about 200 emails that came in through the night before I see anything I want to see. What's going to happen when commercial texting becomes as ubiquitous as email? Will people start ignoring texts? And then if so, what's your plan to keep it special? Keep it where people respond in 90 seconds versus 90 minutes. How do we prevent companies like yours from being a victim of your own success?
Great question. So email, it's the thing I always say to people is look at your phone. How many unread text messages do you have versus how many unread emails? And if you're anything like me, I have a ton of unread emails, but like you said, I have
no unread text. Yes.
Unless we get off this call, I've probably got a few here, but
yeah,
absolutely. So part of what happened in the industry with texting is to prevent from what you described from happening. You can't just get a list of numbers and just blast out texting to people. They need to opt in for that.
Right. But which email is supposed to be that way, but email is so old that it's already been established before the rules came up, right?
That's right. However,
so texting started when the rules were there and they got adopted for texting. So,
well, kind of. They originally had set up texting to be done through 800 numbers or short codes for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a design for how 10-digit long codes or your normal phone numbers, your normal local area code phone numbers were to do business texting. So there was no rules or regulation. In 2019, 2020, they started rolling out these 10DLC regulations on how it was supposed to be done. One of the things that you have to do as a business is register your EIN, like your LLC EIN, with the campaign registry and say, this is how I'm doing texting. This is how people opt in with me. This is how many messages they're going to be getting. And this is the type of messaging that I'm sending them. Right. So there are regulations around that. In Textdrip, we help guide you through that, get you set up, get you registered, get your campaigns created and all of that. Not through just like videos and tutorials. We actually have a live human that helps you along the way doing that. But all of that is to prevent spamming, blowing up your number, overseas scammers saying COVID relief fund, click on this and enter your social security number and all that stuff, right?
I did win a lottery in Nigeria once.
Did you? Yes. The regulations are there to prevent that type of thing from happening.
Yeah.
But what you also look at is years ago when smartphones really started taking off, everyone thought they needed a mobile app. Right. And now you have 300 mobile apps on your phone, and there's no way the next restaurant that you go to, you're going to install their mobile app.
Right.
So that industry of marketing is no longer, I think, existent unless the and app some way benefits your mobile lifestyle. You're not going to install it.
I agree.
But texting is still there, and people
it's
will
native.
subscribe.
It's native to the phone.
Absolutely. And
you don't download an app; it comes with it. Yeah,
that's right. It's a foundation of it. So people will subscribe to things and get notifications for things that are relevant, information, deals, updates on things, notifications, appointment reminders, things like that. And we help our customers figure out where that fits inside their business model. But you're absolutely right. It's not something you can abuse and beat up. Not just because we don't want to see that our phones getting crowded with text messages, but the industry prevents you from doing that, and you will very quickly get blocked by the carriers if you try to do that right now.
More so than email. I mean, we know an email blocking is, we can block, but they send under multiple email address names, and there's a whole industry for spam blockers and things like that. I think the texting rules are far more regulated and stricter regulation. I know there's regulations on email, but they don't seem to be widely enforced. It's almost like back in the day when Napster was around and people were downloading, free music, ripping off free music. The record industries would pick 4 random people and sue them, make it very public, and they get hit with millions of dollars worth of fines. They can, potentially go bankrupt. And it was really just to send a message that this could be you, But I think my understanding from a layman's standpoint, you're better informed than me, is that I just feel like the regulations are a little tougher when it comes to texting because some people are still on plans where they're paying to receive a text. And I think pretty much everyone's unlimited now, but I think that's where the spirit came from. We don't pay to receive emails, but some people back in the day were paying for every text they received. And even replying back, stop, would be, used against them as a credit, So, I think it started off more regulated, and it's got a little bit of a heavier hammer behind them.
Absolutely, because it's controlled by the carriers at the end of the day.
Right.
So
Right.
the carriers can prevent any traffic from going through.
Right. Yeah, they own the tech that delivers it as opposed to email. I don't think Microsoft Outlook is. I don't think engineers at Microsoft are really caring how much traffic goes through. That's up to.
And ultimately, they're not controlling the email out there
at all. No, not at all. They're just a conduit.
Anywhere. And you'll find that there's services out there for warming up an email account and then sending from. You'll notice the spam emails that you get are not from the domain.
That's right.
Who's trying to reach out to you? They're from some random domain that they made up.
Right.
They warmed up, and then they're just using it for marketing. And then once that thing gets burned up, they move on to another domain.
Exactly, which makes a whack-a-mole out of trying to stop it.
So you got it.
Every business faces challenges, which is a Captain Obvious statement. What were some of the key challenges you faced while building Textdrip, and especially in what would appear to be a competitive industry? I mean, you may do some things very, very uniquely, so you may not consider it like true competition. But the industry, the consumers may see 20 choices. I don't know. I don't know how many there are, hundreds or dozens, whatever. So what were some of the key challenges that you faced, and how did you set yourself apart in that competitive landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key challenges that we found with Textdrip were we were building Textdrip at the same time they were coming out with regulations for 10DLC texting. They were literally creating these rules and regulations as we were rolling this company out. And so it would be week by week, month to month, that they were coming out with brand new rules and regulations that we didn't know. The aggregators that we send our messages didn't know, and certainly our customers didn't know. So immediately we created a compliance department whose sole job was to understand the ins and outs of all of these requirements and then actually work on what are the rumors, what are the projections that we're hearing that are going to be coming out down the road, and how can we get in front of those before they actually get rolled out? So we became masters of understanding compliance, understanding spam regulations, and all of that to help our customers out. And so within Textdrip, when you get started, we help train you on that. We explain what the carriers are looking for, types of keywords that they potentially block. We have AI behind the scenes that looks at what the response codes are that we are getting from the carriers, and we help notify or adapt our users' messaging to make sure that they're not accidentally getting blocked by the carrier. There's a lot of keywords out there that have to do with marketing, right? The same thing with email, right? If you put free in there,
right,
that's a keyword that's going to get blocked. But there's other ones inside, like they call them shaft violation, and they're like hate speech, weapons, marijuana, drugs, things like that. That will get blocked. Character replacements get blocked, where if you replace one character,
Right.
like
A dollar sign instead of an S or something, or
things like that. And nowadays somebody could be just communicating, not even thinking about it, and not realizing that the way that they chat with their friends does not translate to business, and it will get you blocked by the carriers.
Yeah.
And so we have tools inside there to help our people understand that. One of the things that we actually had to build in with our relationships with our aggregators was to get the complete picture of error codes that the carriers were sending. So you have an aggregator that actually delivers the messages out to the different carriers, and they get a delivery receipt essentially from the carriers. And sometimes they'll bundle that delivery receipt, that error code, whatever it is, under one or several different error codes. Well, the problem with that on our end is if it's a generic error code, we don't know what the real reason was for why maybe that message didn't go through. So we had to work with our aggregators to basically force them to give us those error codes, so then we could monitor that, understand that, help our customers understand that. And then it also helps us prevent some users that maybe are trying to get on our platform for nefarious activities from doing anything and blocking before it becomes a result. So building the technology, but also working with our partners is something we had to do along the way, and developing an internal compliance team ultimately inside of Textdrip. But great question.
How want to move from the tech end of your company to more philosophical, based on your entire entrepreneurial journey. What tools or habits or practices have been essential in your journey as a CEO or an entrepreneur? Are there basic tool sets that you lean on regularly to overcome challenges or scale a business, or deal with obstacles along the way?
Absolutely. So I'm going to talk about my 3 keys to success, but before I do, there is a foundational trait that you as a human should have if you want to have a successful life. And that's honesty, trustworthiness. There's actually a book called Lying, and it's got a fish hook on it. Not sure if you've read it or heard of it, but
No.
it talks about how we in the US tell these little white lies all the time, right? And we do it all the time, maybe because you don't want to offend somebody, or you're embarrassed about something and you're telling these little lies. But that can be a slippery slope, and that ends up resulting in more lies and more lies. And you see people do it in sales all the time, right? It's not lying, it's sales. Well, no, it's an exaggeration. No, that's a lie.
Right.
The problem with that is it bleeds into multiple areas of your life, and people can pick up on that. And in my business, I've had relationships where I'm on a net 30 account and they're fronting me $250,000 for a month based on trust with me. I'm working with selling franchises to people, and they're investing $50,000+ with me to purchase this franchise and get this thing set up based on who I am and my trust and who I am. And if you don't have that core trust, you're going to find that life is very difficult beyond just the entrepreneurship world. Trust is an integral component to having a successful life. Beyond that, there's 3 things that I would recommend anybody who wants to achieve their goals or their visions or have a successful life. And these are 3 things that I've distilled from interviewing people on the Successes podcast. The first one is have clear written goals. Amazing things happen when you actually write things down, when you can visualize them, when you can plan them out. When you start writing your goals down, you'll see amazing things happen. And I talk time and time with these entrepreneurs, and they say the same thing. They said, hey, I had these ideas in my head, but the moment I actually wrote them down, I put them on a whiteboard, started visualizing them, started discussing them with other people, started saying, this is the direction we're going, magical things started happening. The second thing around having a successful life beyond just the clear goals is moving on to creating healthy habits while eliminating bad habits. There's two habits that most successful people that I talk to have. And the first one is some sort of health regimen. They focus on their health in some fashion.
Sure.
I'm not saying they're running marathons, but it could be walking daily. It could be getting on the treadmill, lifting weights here and there. There's something focused on their health. It could be a diet plan on their physical health. The second thing that I noticed from a lot of successful people, the second habit that they seem to all have, is you could say, hey, what book are you reading right now? And they'd reach back to their cabinet, pull out their book and say, this is what I'm reading right now. They all have this habit around reading. There was a study, and it was something like 42% of college students after they graduate never finish a full book again in their life. Right? On the flip side, though, the average CEO, top CEO in America, reads roughly one book a week. So who do you want to be? Do you want to be the average guy that never reads a book again, or one of the top CEOs reading one book a week? It's a skill, a habit that will translate well for the rest of your life. Now, on the flip side of that, establishing good habits, watching for bad habits, one of the worst ways to develop a bad habit, or one of the easiest ways to develop a bad habit, is to listen to the notifications on your phone. This thing right here is a bad habit builder.
Yeah.
It's like that bell that gets us salivating every time that notification goes off. So for me personally, that's okay. I turn off all the notifications on my phone. I don't look at it. Social media is a time that I have scheduled out. And I'm doing it for business purposes, or maybe I'm looking at family things, but it is very scheduled. I'm not spending my day looking at it, because that's a habit that'll get me sucked in. And over time, it loses productivity and keeps me from achieving my goal. The third thing for achieving your goals is what I call arrogant confidence. What I mean by that is this level of confidence that's just above your own level of confidence. It's pushing past that imposter syndrome.
It's that little bit of exaggeration. Yeah.
Yeah. You're putting on this hat that's saying, hey, I can do that. I'm going to pull this off, right? Steve Jobs talks about this entire world being built by ordinary people like you and me. Yeah, I would agree, but they had that thing, that confidence that said, you know what, I'm going to go build that building. No, I'm going to go ahead and start that business. I'm going to figure that thing out. And time again, when I talk to entrepreneurs, they all took that leap of faith. They took that jump. They trusted in themselves. They put on that hat of arrogant confidence, and they boldly moved forward towards their dreams and ultimately got the results that they wanted. So those are the three things: set clear goals that are written, build healthy habits while eliminating the bad ones, and then the third one, put on that hat of arrogant confidence.
So if you're going to tell a lie, limit it to the arrogant confidence. If you're going to exaggerate, limit it to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're going to do that.
The thing I would say, though, is it's not really a lie. The lie is the opposite.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we've all done that. I've done that. You know, I started in an industry that's high tech, and most of our customers are engineers or PhDs of some sort. We're in a very scientific world. And I'm a college dropout. So when I showed up on this planet, Planet Tech, I was an alien, and I knew it. And it took a long time to get rid of my imposter syndrome. But when I did, I had this tremendous amount of confidence because I was able to succeed in that world. And that gave me confidence, probably more confidence than I deserved. But I think when you lead with confidence, not necessarily bravado, but confidence, people read that. And people want to work with people who are confident.
Absolutely not bravado. And I'm not saying go fly a plane when you don't have a pilot's license or operate on somebody. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right. I agree.
But us humans are far more capable than what we give ourselves credit for. I have achieved things because instead of me looking at a situation going, yeah, I can't do that. I'm a college dropout. Who am I to franchise a company? I'm not McDonald's.
Right.
instead of me saying that, I say, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Instead of me saying, hey, I'm gonna open a business over in India. What do I know about, international business? Like I said, I didn't even go to college. How am I going to achieve that? No, I'll figure it out. If you looked at our ancestors and you said, hey, I got this device I carry around in my pocket, and it will give me the answers to all of the combined human knowledge in the world instantly,
Yeah.
what would they say? They would say, oh my God, that's magic. That's a genie. It's an
Yeah.
amazing thing.
Can't be done.
Yeah, it's
That's what they would
crazy.
say. Yeah.
But we have these tools, we have these resources, we have AI, we have all of this stuff available to us. And the freedoms that we have in this world, you can do anything. Do you need money? No. You could go right now and say, hey, you know what? I came to this country. I have no money. I have a part-time job and I want to start a business and be an entrepreneur. You could start cleaning houses right now.
Yep.
You can start cleaning houses for money. Once your book of business grows enough, you do a good enough job, then you start hiring people. And then you start hiring more people. And you start hiring more people. That's one example of a million that you can do in this country from nothing.
Yeah.
So the lie is not the arrogant confidence. The lie is believing that you can achieve your dreams. The lie is setting a cap on yourself because you are far more capable than what you are giving yourself credit for.
Yeah, my parents are both European immigrants. I'm first generation American, so I've spent a lot of time in Europe as a child, and my wife's from Europe as well. She's from Scotland, and I love Scotland. I love going to Europe, but I think one thing that separates the United States from most of the world, if not all of the world, is I think becoming an entrepreneur, building your own business, as difficult as it is much more possible here than anywhere else in the world. The government's not handing out money. They're not like rolling out a red carpet and catching you every time you fall. In fact, our country notoriously has virtually no safety net. We're not a socialistic country with free healthcare for all. And the less money you make, the more you get from the government. We're not that. So we're definitely on a high wire with no net. But I think there's less obstacles in the way. From a tax standpoint, we all complain taxes are too high. Yes, they are. Travel around the world and see what everyone else is doing. And you'll come back and kiss the tarmac the moment you get off the airplane here. But I think that our country was built on the foundation of entrepreneurship and creativity and challenges and do the impossible. And that's what we're known for as a people. And not to knock any other country. I mean, there's obviously entrepreneurs all over the world. But I think there are fewer government-placed obstacles here, fewer regulations here, even though we think there's way too many, and there probably are. I think it's more possible here. And maybe it's just the culture. Maybe it's just the vibe. Maybe it's just the fact that we are an entrepreneurial people from a culture standpoint. Maybe that's just the only difference, but there is a difference, I think. And I think if you're going to be born somewhere in the world and you're born as an entrepreneur, you would be blessed to be born here because it's just a little bit easier. Not easy, but a little bit easier. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, and I think the foundation of who we are is built on this entrepreneurship. Often people ask us why American football is popular here and not in other countries. And they talk about the little struggle, the little achievement that happened. And that is so American. And
1 yard at a time. Yeah.
It's 1 yard at a time, whereas other countries just don't seem to get it. And that's part of what you either love or hate with entrepreneurship. Is it the little goals? It's the little achievements in daily life. It is not hey, I'm going to get a pat on the back from my boss because I did this.
There are no pats on the back. You got to pat yourself on the back, right? You got to, you got to be flexible to do that. You mentioned something I want to circle back to because I think it's really important for our viewers and listeners to hear this. You had mentioned something to the effect of, if your goal is to make money, you're probably not going to make money, right? If that's your sole goal. And I've learned over the years, 30 plus years that I've had my business, that money is not the result of chasing money. Sales are not the result of chasing sales. Profit is not the result of just chasing profit. They are all results of good decisions, right? So eggs don't make a cake. Flour, butter, sugar, baking soda do not make a cake. They are ingredients to making a great cake, right? And I think that if we take our sights off of very monetary goals and we concentrate on the right thing at the right time and making great decisions, then the money, the profit, the sales, all the ingredients will fall into place, and it has no choice. It's like if you bake a cake and follow the recipe exactly, you will get a good cake, right? And I think it's the same. I think it's almost a universal law that good decisions yield good results, and good results are the things you were chasing without chasing the individual ingredients. Does that land in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's something else I would add to that. The main thing is entrepreneurship it's not an always easy path. It
No,
very rarely is. It's often
that's an
struggle. There's
understatement.
often
Yes.
times where you're saying it would be so easy to just get a job somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Is this really worth it? Is this stress really worth it? There's days where, yeah, things go well, but there's a lot of stress and anxiety and things like that. And so what keeps you going during that time? What is your North Star? What is the thing that keeps you level-headed and making the right decision?
Right.
Well, it needs to be a better purpose. And that purpose, especially in the beginning, is nobody else is doing it, and I believe in this thing, and I want it to be done. You asked like what my success is and what has changed. I hope you don't mind if I'm going to answer that now because it kind of ties into
Well,
this.
to set up the question, you have a podcast called Success Is ... right? And
Yep.
where you bring in people to define success. I'm wondering, when you started your business, when you started your entrepreneurship, what was your view of success and what is it today?
Yeah.
How has
So
that morphed?
yeah, I think, me as a young child, my vision of success was money. I was one of 7 kids raised by a single mother, hand-me-down clothes. We didn't
Yeah,
have the Christmas presents and the things like that my friends had. They
right.
got a video game system for Christmas that was just mind-blowing. We're eating spaghetti again, and they had the what's the truck that delivers the frozen food? The Schwann's. There you go.
Oh yeah, TV
Schwann's.
dinners. Yes.
Oh my God. My buddy had those with little pizzas and stuff and all this stuff, and they'd get these amazing things. They'd travel down to Florida for Christmas. They'd fly on a plane. I mean, these were crazy things to me,
Right.
as a kid. And so for me early on, absolutely, the success was money.
Mm-hmm.
That had to be what it is. So I worked long hours and I put a lot of time into coming up with that money. And then I got that money, said, well, this ain't it.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Right.
And you see this a lot from celebrities and people that make it big, right? They're
Yep.
chasing this. They say, I'm going to find that happiness when I reach this goal. And
Lottery
then they
winners. Lottery
lottery
winners.
winners. And then what ends up happening, it's disaster.
Yep.
They find out that doesn't solve it. And that's
Right.
the problem with putting the money first, is money is so empty that when you get it, you realize that it does nothing for you.
Yeah.
And so that quickly had to change. And fortunately for me, having a family helped adapt that and change that. And there's a few things that have changed my vision of success nowadays. And I think the primary one for entrepreneurs is I want to spend time where I can spend time, which right now to me is my children. That's the most important thing. I want to be there, be present for my family. And success for me ultimately is centered around my family. And that's really where I'm at. My youngest is autistic, and we know we're gonna have to take care of him for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of my long-term purpose goal is I want to make sure that he can have around the clock care for him for the rest of his life and be taken care of.
So
And
generational wealth for your son,
that's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Not to buy a Lamborghini, but
Right.
generational wealth. So
For
I never have
care.
to worry
Yeah.
about it. Right.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
not a 80-something-year-old still working, trying to take care of my, autistic son. So these are the things that I define as success. And then another thing that's morphed out of my version of success, and it's interesting because I have a show called Success Is,
Mm-hmm.
because success for me is constantly being in the pursuit of different versions of success. And I've noticed that's changed over my life. Another thing that I find very rewarding is helping provide the dream job for people that work for me. That's really cool. When an employee says, "Hey, I absolutely love this job. I was job to job before this. I've been working for you for now 6 years, and I absolutely love it. And I just really want to thank you for giving me the opportunity years
Wow.
ago." And that's really cool, and a big motivator for growing my businesses as well. So, um, I hit on a few topics there, but my family, my employees, um, these are things that are really important to me.
I think we all start with money. I did the same thing. I was reluctantly an entrepreneur, as I said earlier. But once I jumped into the deep end of the cold pool, success was defined as money. Once I have a certain number in my bank account, I'll know I'm successful. And once I owe more than $100 in taxes, I'll know I'm successful. And
For me, it was
we
when I can afford health insurance as an
there you go.
entrepreneur. That
There
was
you
a
go.
big one for
And
me.
that
When
is a
I
big
could get
one,
health
actually.
insurance for my family, I
Yeah.
thought, man, I made it at that point.
I think if a gun was put to my head and I was forced to have just one word to define success today, early on it was money. Today, I would say freedom, because that encompasses, financial freedom. It encompasses doing things for the world you want to do. It's uh, freedom for my family, for my grandkids, all of that. So, but that's always at the end of a journey. Whenever I talk to entrepreneurs, I always hear something exactly like what you said, or a morph of what I said, or it's much less monetary than it is the other way around. Finally, before we go, we're running out of time, but what advice would you give to, I'll say young, it doesn't have to be young, but young in the entrepreneurial world, so emerging entrepreneurs? What bit of advice would you give them, knowing they're going to face a bunch of hurdles, knowing they probably have certain goals, knowing they probably have expectations that may not be realistic? What advice would you give them? What do you wish someone had told you, or you could tell your younger self?
One of the biggest things that I had to learn early on is about balance. Balance in life, focusing on my goals and the things that I wanted to achieve, but also time away from those things, right? The mental health. Something that I do that I don't know that too many people do is I schedule time to do nothing. And the where I came up with this idea of scheduling time to do nothing was I was so busy building my companies, and I just had this flood of ideas that would come either when I was in the shower or when I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it. I said, why is this happening to me? And So I read some books and stuff like that on the subject, and it was essentially you're taking in all this input all day, but your brain never has an opportunity to sit there and process the thought and the ideas, right? So I started focusing on balance in my life and prioritizing time to do nothing, time to just think, time to process the day's activities. Amazing things happen.
Yeah.
Started coming out with ideas and strategies and all sorts of things that I didn't think about. I started seeing the business from a 50,000 foot view, and I could see the direction further where we're going.
Yeah.
And I don't think you'll have too many entrepreneurs that will tell you to take time to do nothing, but it's
I
important.
agree.
It's
I
absolutely
agree.
important.
It's so funny you say that. Every year for 25 years, my wife and I and friends go down to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. It's a 2-hour flight from where I live in Southern California. So it's as far away as you can get in just over 2 hours. And my staff hates it when I was working there all the time. They hated it when I would go there because I would go there and we were there for 7 days. We have a couple of timeshares down there. So some friends stay in one, we stay in the other. And I have 7 days of doing nothing. I've done the horseback riding and the zip lining and the whatever. I'm not interested in that. I go there and I totally check out. And I sit in the pool, and when no one's around, I'll smoke a cigar, have a cocktail, and I'll just sit and just enjoy the Mexican sun and all that comes with it. And ideas just start exploding in my head. And when I come back from my trip, this is what they don't like. I'm like, everyone, all hands now, conference room. And I'm so excited, and I've just got all these ideas. I can't even get them out fast enough. And my staff are just like, oh my God, can we stop him from going down there? Because, maybe 80% of the ideas are no good. Sometimes when I say them out loud, they sound crazy to me. But that's where a lot of our products came from. And that's where a lot of the evolution of our products came from. That's where new services came from. My happy place, my pool in Mexico. And I think that's what you said is very insightful, that we do need time to do nothing, because nothing is when your creative side gets your attention. It's hard when you're in the middle of putting out fires and, doing the whole fire brigade thing, by yourself, for ideas to creep in. They're there, but you can't work on the important because you're working on the urgent. And creativity is important, but the urgency trumps it. And giving yourself space to allow what sets you apart from the majority of people as an entrepreneur, allow time for that gift that you have to express itself in your mind and become more entrepreneurial. And I think that's super good advice, and so counterintuitive, because when you do take the leap, there is no time. There is no time. I mean, you're working, I would go in on coding days, especially. I would go in on a Monday and not come home till Wednesday. And I would think I should go home. It's probably 10 o'clock at night. Well, it was, but it was 10 o'clock at night the next day. And, my wife knew. She goes, no, he's on coding time, right? So he's just totally unaware of the time. You're in that zone. But there is a time, eventually, once you get started, and you change out of first gear and you're starting to get some momentum. I think that's when it's super important to force the time, and it's going to feel very awkward at first, because the whole time you're doing nothing, you're anxious about you should be doing something, but you are doing something. You're giving your creativity a time to heal and show itself, and I think and heal all the wounds you have from
That's
all
right.
the time
Absolutely.
you spent. Right, we're battered and bruised as entrepreneurs.
That's right. And it's a terrible thing to make decisions on emotion. So a lot of times when you have time to kind of settle, relax, and get calm, you're accessing that part of your brain that's doing the higher thinking and the decision making.
Yeah.
It's
We could do a whole episode on, I call it making decisions through lenses. So fear-based decisions, money-based decisions. When Maslow's, Abraham Maslow, in his book, The Hierarchy of Needs, right, talks about, the Maslow's theory. If all you have is a hammer, everything is a bed of nails. All you see are nails if all you have is a hammer. And I think when all you need is money, you just see like short-term solutions. So you make fear-based decisions, you bring in money, none of it's profitable. And, now you've got a profit problem. You can pay payroll this week, but now you have a bigger problem you're going to face next week. And next week you'll fix that problem with a Band-Aid that will knock on to a bigger problem down the road, but it's not today's problems. And I think we do that. We're firefighters, and we are both the firefighter and the arsonist in this scenario. We're lighting these fires that we're now spending time to put out. And so that time, meditation, or just smoking a cigar, drinking a cocktail in a Mexican pool, I would recommend the latter. But I think it's very therapeutic and it's good for the business. And if your goal is to have all your team members have their dream jobs, you're doing it for them too, right? You're doing it for your family. You're doing it for your son. You're doing it for you. You're doing it for the world. You're doing it for your customers. You're not wasting time. You're not blowing time when you should be doing something else. That is the something else you should be doing. So that's really sage advice.
Thank you. Absolutely. And it's funny, you'd mentioned early on in the episode of how some of our entrepreneurs, we share these things. And I started laughing as soon as you said, my employees hate it when I go on vacation.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
As I immediately knew what you're talking about. I get the exact same thing from me. Yeah. We hate it when you go on vacation because suddenly I got this idea. Hey, let me tell you about this thing I was thinking on. Yeah. Absolutely.
You're all pumped up, and they're still doing the grind every day, and you come back all pumped up, ready to talk and light the fuse again on all these projects. Yeah, I think we're all the same. We are all the same but different, but there's a lot of commonalities behind all of our journeys. Well, Phil, for my audience, if you want to get information on Textdrip or Phil, I'll provide the links. If you're watching this on YouTube, look down here somewhere and you'll see information on Phil's company. And I'll also put a link to Phil's Success Is podcast. I've watched several of his episodes. I think a couple of years ago, I was actually on your show.
Were a guest. Yeah, absolutely. You were really on guest. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, when I found you, you looked awfully familiar, but I tend to recognize people I've never met, and I don't recognize those I have, because I do a lot of like public speaking. And so I don't trust my judgment on that. So I didn't look any deeper. But then when I booked you as a guest and started doing some research and looking at your podcast, I went far enough down. I'm like, oh my God, there I am. That's why he looks familiar. I know that guy. Yeah. So I was really looking forward to this conversation. It was like a reunion of.
That's right.
I wasn't doing that kind of podcast back then, but thanks for all the work you do. Thanks for making sure that all the texts I receive are opt-in. I personally appreciate that. Thank
Absolutely.
you, and continued success in your journey.
Thank you. Likewise, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on the show. It was great chatting with you as always. Appreciate it.
Oh, and I didn't mention. I tend to have multiple final questions, but I didn't mention. Just a real quick aside, you now operate, and you alluded to it earlier, a horse ranch.
That's right.
So that was a strange segue, for your business move. But when you and I did our kind of pre-call, our discovery call, a week or so ago, you did it from your horse ranch, which is absolutely gorgeous. And you have stables, and you have the ring that, I don't know if that's the right term, but you have the ring that the horses compete in and things like that, or train in. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's such a bizarre thing for a tech entrepreneur to have.
Right.
But once again, we talk about that balance. And for me, the horse farm really is that balance. That moment to get away and have time doing nothing is often me just walking around the horse farm, walking around our private pond with the fountains in it and just the beautiful views, the gorgeous skies. It's an absolutely beautiful farm. We have the largest indoor arena in Michigan down there. My office is above the lower barn, so I'm in that environment every day. We have 2 indoor arenas, an outdoor arena. We're a hunter jumper facility, so English style riding for the jumping, and it is definitely different than the other businesses that I have, but I love it. I love in the summer when I get a chance to go out and, help work on the fences or do something like that. Cause the physical work is different than
Yeah.
sitting in front of a computer and the mental work.
Yeah.
And it's rewarding in a different way.
Yeah. No, I can totally relate to that in a not such a glamorous way, but every once in a while, when I was working at the company every day, every once in a while I'd say, I'll load the truck. I like to drive the forklift. To me, that's just like the ultimate Tonka toy when I was a kid. And my staff rolls their eyes, and like, oh, boss wants to drive the forklift, move out of his way, give him a wide berth, But just doing something different, just taking my mind off it, it's just a little bit of a respite. It's like when you keep your computer open for too many days in a row, sometimes you just have to reboot it, because the memory gets a little, fragmented and all of that. To me, that and my Mexican pool are kind of reboots. Sitting on a boat, floating in the water, doing nothing all that is just the much needed reboot. So you defrag your mind. For those computer people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's super important. Well, continued success with the horses, the horse ranch, and Textdrip, and whatever else you decide to do. Stay in touch. I'd love to follow your next wild journey.
Absolutely. We'll do it. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks, Phil. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on episode number 4 of the Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast. A special thanks to Philip Portman for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. If you're an entrepreneur and would like to be my guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikekonrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest. Just remember, that's Konrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikekonrad.com. Again, that's Konrad spelled with a K. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback and a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook, available on both Audible and Amazon. Thank you so much again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.